My name is Joe Prim, and I am the host of Prepare.Defend.Lead. In this episode, we are going to get into Chapter 5 of my new book, Open. I hope you'll stick around, and I'll catch you on the other side of the intro.
The comfort and distractions of today collide to indulge our desires and provide a slow death by apathy. A superior primitive ethos exists. Prepare for tomorrow. Defend what you value and lead those you love. This mindset is the foundation of living an authentic life as a bold, disciplined man resolute in your mission. Prepare, defend, lead. Your mission. Own it.
All right, here we go with yet another episode of PDL. Thanks for joining me and coming along for the ride. If this is your first time listening, welcome. I appreciate you tuning in. If you are back for more, thanks especially to you guys for making this podcast happen. I appreciate those that have taken the time to write up reviews and check out the website at Prepare.Defend.Lead.com. Purchasing t-shirts and stickers, all that stuff makes a big impact in keeping this mission going forward. Share this podcast with your friends, leave a review. All these little things that we can do are appreciated by me. I know that we're all crammed for time and all trying to make sure that we're getting done what we need to get done each day. I appreciate those who've taken the time and it's those little things like that that keep this mission moving in the forward direction. So I thank you. In this episode, we'll get into Chapter 5, Open Your Mouth, of my book. But first, I wanted to talk just a little bit because we're at a big turning point for our family. Is a lot of you guys, or some of you guys, have been following this podcast for a while or listened to Ever Vigilant. Some of you guys switched over when I took a break and came back with PDL, and I appreciate that. But we are in a big time of transition because we are about to move into our new house on a new piece of property, and in the middle of getting ready for a big move again, getting the house, this rental house that we've been in, cleaned up, and getting the boxes all packed up and getting things all in order as much as possible in order to make the transition smooth. But we all know that we'll run into hiccups and some craziness during this move, but this is going to be a big move, and it's a very interesting time for our family as we set ourselves to take on yet another challenge. And a big part of the reason this is such a epic move for our family really is that after we left the homestead in Illinois, it was pretty uncertain whether we would ever return to that sort of lifestyle again. We had lived that way on the homestead, on that little piece of property, for about 4.5 years, and raised chickens and ducks and geese and had dogs and cats and goats, and really enjoyed that lifestyle. Really enjoyed planting the trees and bushes and taking care of gardens and living out that type of life. But when we left that, when we took a big leap of faith and put all that aside and moved down to Texas, it was very uncertain that we would ever do that again. I would say especially for me. I wasn't sure if my kids would want to do that again after having some time in the suburbs. I wasn't sure if my wife, after getting back into the suburbs, would want to return to that more rustic, more rural, more difficult type of life ever again. So for me, it wasn't just moving away. It was also really kind of abandoning a dream and abandoning something that I didn't know if I would ever have the opportunity to have what I had had there ever again. So we've been here in Texas about 1 year and 9 months, so almost 2 years, and we are set to move on to a new house on 5 acres in a really, really amazing development. And in my wildest dreams, I would have not foreseen that this was what our future held. And I am more than excited to step forward into this new challenge, into this new endeavor, into this new life that we're not exactly sure what it'll bring. When you get off of the beaten path, when you stop living the easier or the simple or more simple way, you don't know what kind of difficulties or what kind of troubles or what the next challenge will be. And so it's an exciting time, but at the same time, it's a time of excitement, but not knowing exactly what we're getting ourselves into, and not knowing exactly what these next few years are going to hold for us. But all of us are really excited and really looking forward to the challenges that come with this. It's a little bit different territory doing this in Texas compared to Illinois, where we were originally from, but we are, all of us, very, very excited, and I feel like I'm maybe more excited and more of a kid in this even than my wife and kids, just because, like I said, I felt like when we left Illinois, when I felt that we were called to leave where we were at, I really felt that I was giving up on a dream, something that I had really wanted to build a homestead, to build a more sustainable, more resilient lifestyle, and to drop all of it and leave and then come back and live in the suburbs was not ideal for me. That was not what I wanted to do. So to have this dream realized, but in a different place, in a different state, in a different climate, different everything, really is very exciting to me. But as I make these transitions in my life, and as we as a family take on new challenges more regularly than most people, and I take on these challenges, what I like to do is spend some time mentally looking at what I've learned through these times, what the changes are going to be, what changes I need to make in myself, how can I adapt, and really spend some time mentally going over what's happening, what has happened in the past, and how these transitions take place. And as I was doing that, I thought of a really funny story from when we made our move up or down here to Texas from Illinois. And it all happened 1,000 times faster than we ever would have imagined, than I ever could have planned for them to happen. I had figured that our homestead would have been on the market for at least 6 months. I thought we had plenty of time to rehome our dogs and goats and chickens and ducks and find good places for all of them, and really just kind of slowly let that go and move forward into the next challenge. But that's not how things went. The house was on the market less than a week, and I think in less than a month from when we had decided that we were going to head down to Texas, we were packed up and moving. One of the biggest challenges was that we had made the decision that when we moved, we weren't going to haul a lot of stuff with us. We weren't going to hire a moving company. We were going to only do what would fit in my wife's Jeep, what would fit in the back of my Ford truck, and what would fit into the utility trailer that I could haul behind it. And that was a gigantic challenge. To whittle down all of our earthly possessions down to those couple of vehicles was not easy, and was a task where every single room was gone through with a fine-tooth comb, and anything and everything that we could get rid of, we did. So we got down to like the day before we were going to leave, and I was packing up kind of final items, figuring out what would be good to, fit in this nook and cranny in the Jeep, and what I could fit in the back of the truck, and what was going into the trailer, and making sure things in the trailer were nice and tight so things weren't moving around during the drive. And I would say probably about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on the day before we were supposed to close, I had finally gotten everything loaded up in the truck and loaded up in the trailer, and thought, you know what, I'm going to take this thing down the road here, and we're going to see how this trailer hauls what I have loaded in it. I didn't get a mile down the road, and I realized that trailer was way overloaded and that I needed to make some changes, and quick. So I made it back to the house, and after having some discussions with my wife and looking over what we had loaded up in there, the only things that we could really get rid of was our food preps. And, in life, oftentimes we try to rely on ourselves for our own securities and our own protections. And while I am all for that, and that's why this podcast would be named Prepare.Defend.Lead, but there are times in our life where we need to rely on that external source. We got to rely on God and His provisions. And I felt in that moment, as I was realizing that what I was going to need to get rid of was the food, or a large chunk of the food that I had set aside, that we had, I wouldn't say stockpiled, it wasn't that much, through the years, I was going to have to get rid of it, dispose of it. So it was a real moment of where that faith was realized once again of, hey, are you going to do this? Are you committed? Do you believe in me that this is what you're going to do? Or are you going to continue to rely on yourself? So long story short, I had to act very quickly. We didn't have time. We were closing the next morning. Time is ticking down. So I unloaded the whole trailer because, of course, the food was the heaviest. It was on the bottom of the trailer. Pulled all of those crates out. Made a quick phone call to my brother-in-law because they were going to be moving down to Texas about the same time we were. And said, hey, look, I have some crates with food in it. Would it be possible for you to load that onto your moving truck when they come and pick up your furniture? He said, you know what, that would not be a problem. Just get it to my house. The issue was that they lived about 4 hours round trip away. So how bad did I want to hold on to that food? Pretty bad. So what it came down to is I could only fit 4 of these storage bins in the back of the Jeep. And that meant that I had 2 of them that I was going to need to empty out. Packed up the ones that had the more important things in it, made sure those were loaded back into the trailer, loaded the trailer all back up once again, another several hours, loaded the 4 bins that I could take to my brother-in-law's house, loaded those up into the Jeep, and now I had 2 bins that I needed to figure out what in the world at 12 o'clock at night I was going to do with 2 bins filled with Mylar bags, filled with beans and rice and flour and pasta. So, what did I do? The only thing that you can do when you actually have 2.5 acres. I went to the most remote corner of the property, and 2.5 acres, when you're looking for the remotest part, is not that big. So I went down to the furthest part away from the house because I couldn't make too big of a mess, because I knew that they would be coming for their final inspection in the morning. Went to the farthest area and cut open bag after bag after bag after bag and dumped out what was my security blanket, right? What was something that I held on to make me feel secure that I could watch over my family and I could provide for them during difficult times. So emptied out those bags, and it took a long time. There was a lot lot of bags of pasta and beans and flour that I was dumping everywhere. I ended up back at the house at probably 1 a.m, covered in flour. Took a quick shower, went to sleep for a couple hours, and then headed off to drop off the other crates with my brother-in-law. So this is what I'm talking about, where you can have a plan. You can have a great idea of where you want to go. And you can even have a well-formulated, well-thought-out plan of how in the world you are going to get there. But the reality is, until that journey begins, until your idea, until your concept is put to the test, it really means nothing. I had this great idea of all the stuff that I could haul in that trailer, but it only took going down the road 1 mile, and I realized that was never going to work. And we often come up with these plans or ideas or dreams or goals in our life, and we don't put them to the test. Or when we do put them to the test, we're so rigid in that idea that then we throw it all away at the first time that we run into problems. So I'm always very careful about planning things out and planning out contingencies, but also at the same time realizing I must be flexible. And if I run into an obstacle or we run into an issue, how can I mitigate that problem? How can I get back going in the right direction as soon as possible? So just some thoughts and some lessons that I'm kind of thinking about myself as we make this big new transition and move. I'm hoping that this new transition and move will also make some changes in the podcast and get more into doing some video stuff, maybe doing some video podcasts. So there's some stuff to look forward to. And once again, as always, I do appreciate you guys listening. And as we get into the section here where I'm going to get into the book, one of the coolest feelings in the world is right now I'm holding the paper copy of this book in my hand. And I will readily acknowledge that this is not the best book ever. But it is a book of lessons that I have learned. It is a book of principles that I live by. It is a book filled with stories about me and stories about my family. So to have created this book is a phenomenal feeling. And that reminds me, the other day, my son was playing video games, and he was struggling on a level. And he said, Dad, pass this level for me. And I said to him, if I pass that level for you, all that's going to happen is when you get to the next level, you're going to struggle. And if you don't allow yourself to struggle through that level to the reward, to passing that level, it will mean nothing to you. And so, of course, he tried it one more time, and he passed that level. And he said, Dad, I get it. I would not feel as good about passing this level as I do right now if you had passed it for me. And I was like, okay. Whew. Every once in a while, we have these ideas, these lessons that we're able to present to our kids, and they click. And that was just happened to be one of those moments. But what I was saying, that goes back to this book and the time and the effort and the energy and the late nights and the times trying to watch YouTube videos and figure out how in the world to get it onto Kindle and reading articles about how to get it printed and looking through people to format the book for me. All that stuff comes to a point where this paperback is right here in my hand, and I will be reading out of my first copy of the book as I read this time. So without using up any more of your time, let's get into Chapter 5, Open Your Mouth. Several years ago, I was out of state on a construction project working on the exterior of a building. I'm not an engineer, but I recognized the potential flaw with the panels that we were installing on the upper floors. I believed there was potential of the panels eventually falling and causing a tragic accident. I showed the issue to my coworker, who simply didn't care or feel it was his responsibility to say anything, or perhaps he just didn't have the balls to speak up. I was in this alone, so I told my project manager about the issue, and he refused to even acknowledge that there may be a problem. I had a choice to make. I could continue installing these faulty panels, or I could stop the work. With the road shut down, a crane on site and set up, and the project already way behind schedule, I made my choice. I told the project manager in very clear terms that he could make the right choice now, or I would go over his head. Either way, I personally would not proceed with installation. He made the right choice and put a hold on the project. The issue became recognized as a major flaw and ended up taking weeks and thousands of dollars to fix. There could have been severe consequences for me, and I figured I'd lose my job as a result of my choice to stop working. But I know that I can sleep at night and have no fear of being called in to be deposed for a tragic accident. I put my job on the line because I believed that others could be put in danger if I didn't speak up. Each day, you are given countless opportunities to open your mouth and speak. It's not the act of opening your mouth or feelings that may be involved at the time, but rather the words that come out and the tone used that have consequences. Once those words come out of your mouth, they are yours and yours alone. And you then are responsible. The open your mouth principle must be used in a respectful manner. Each of the other principles are powerful, but they should be used freely, as the consequences of their use can only lead to positive results. In the Bible, James compares the power of the tongue to the rudder of a great ship, small in size, holding the power to set course of your life, and perhaps even more troubling, the lives of those around us. It says in James 3, 4 and 5, take ships, for example. Although they are large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider that a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. Some of you may have the gift of gab, and others may be, like me, an introvert, completely happy to be left alone. This chapter is not about talk. Talk is idle chit-chat that often serves little or no purpose. It is a modern ritualistic dance to sort out things that usually do not matter anyway. This chapter is about the power we wield when we open our mouths. We all know that with great power comes great responsibility. Thanks, Stan Lee. And the speaking out must be viewed as a great responsibility. The possibility of causing long-term harm to others as a result of using careless, hurtful words is too great not to proceed with caution each and every time we speak. Whether intentional or not, our words can have negative consequences and tear down even those that we love, and permanently scar or destroy those relationships. The great news is the power of speaking is a double-edged sword that also has the power to build up, encourage, and strengthen relationships. We can speak the truth and set wrong things right. We can shout warnings of danger or whisper in our lover's ear. The biggest problem is that far too many of us speak without thinking. Rather than take a moment to evaluate and clarify our intentions, we let our emotions get the best of us, or let bad habits control what we say. This is why I believe to tap into the true power of speaking, we must be intentional, empathetic, and honest whenever we speak. Opening your mouth is not about you. It is about those that will hear your words and how they will respond. I believe if we filter our thoughts through the following 3 filters before we speak, we can make a dramatic change in our communication and our relationships in a very short time. This may seem a bit daunting at first, but as you grow accustomed to using these filters and see their practicality, they soon become intuitive. Before a meeting, making a speech, or coaching a team, all three can be used to set your message. At other times, one of these will be enough to keep you from saying something stupid and help direct you, clarify your thoughts. Clearly, there will be times when speaking off the cuff is necessary. In these cases, be sure not to let your emotions run your mouth, and always be honest. Intention. In order to communicate effectively, we must understand what it is that we want to get out of the verbal interaction. In some cases, that may be as simple as asking where the salsa is at the local grocery store. In such an instance, clarity and brevity are your friends. Clearly, the intention is to locate the salsa. The store clerk does not need to know why you are shopping there, how long you have been looking for the salsa, or what you are eating for dinner. This is just a silly example, but you understand where I'm going with this. The clearer you can be, and the shorter that you can adequately present the question, the better. The same rules follow for a meeting. Untold hours of production are lost each year because of a lack of intention. The meetings are on the schedule, so they take place week in and week out, or day in and day out, with little, if any, regard for the outcome of the meeting. If there was a clearly defined objective to the meeting, and each contributor had a clear and brief contribution, much less time would be wasted and more could be accomplished. If you are in a position to lead meetings, set the intentions and expectations for those involved. If you are a contributor to regular meetings, define for yourself why you were there and plan ahead to make your contribution clear and to the point. When you have a conversation with those close to you, clearly understanding your intentions is just as important. I'll skip through the personal story on that, and we'll jump into empathy. Showing empathy along with listening are keys to building rapport with others. That should be one of the main focuses in all of our conversations. Showing empathy means that we try to understand where the other person is coming from. This doesn't mean that we must agree with them, but that we have made an effort through listening and asking questions to see the world through their eyes, their truths, and their experiences. In our modern culture, the ability to meet someone where they are at honestly and without compromising your beliefs should be a superpower. So I'll read the personal story on this one since we've just been kind of talking about the homestead. It says, almost 2 years ago, we left our small 2.5-acre homestead in Illinois and rather abruptly moved to Texas. Well, it had been something that we had talked about for years. When we made the decision to move, our homestead sold much faster than I expected. In less than a week on the market, it was under contract. My wife always wanted to push the limits, opted for an early closing date, and the race was on. With chickens, ducks, geese, rabbits, goats, a dog and cat that needed to find a new home, as well as a household to cut down to the back of a pickup and a trailer, there was a lot of work to do. Of course, things didn't calm down once we arrived in Texas with the job search, then a new job, and settling into a new state. Through this entire experience, I would routinely ask my son and daughter, "Are you excited to move to Texas?" Or, "How do you like Texas? Isn't it great?" Their responses varied from "I hate it here" to "I really hate it here." I would often correct them for their bad attitude and tell them why they were wrong. Then one day, as I was commuting home from work and finally letting myself settle into a bit of a routine, I realized something. I missed my dog and my goats and the small sliver of property that I invested so much into. Reminiscing on all the trees and fruit bushes we had planted, it wasn't until that moment that I realized that what my children were experiencing. It wasn't until that moment that I had realized just how much they had given up. Moving to Texas wasn't their idea, but they had lost most of what they had ever known. They had lost their purpose, the feeding and watering of their animals and collecting eggs. They no longer had trees to climb or fields to run in or a creek to play in. This realization hit me hard. The rest of the drive home, I pondered the likelihood that I had not considered their feelings, their loss, and how they felt or why they felt that way. That evening at dinner, I apologized. I showed them empathy and listened to them tell me what they had missed and why they missed it. This was a turning point for me as a father and the beginning of a new attitude for them about Texas. Their attitudes haven't changed overnight, but by showing empathy and meeting them where they were, they slowly began to embrace Texas. They still complain about the lack of snow, and probably always will, but I'm okay with that. Jump into honesty. We must always be honest, even when we believe our honesty may cost us. No matter the consequences, lying can never be seen as an option. Never, ever. The consequences of lying or even twisting the truth are too great. Lies often affect the world in ways we cannot readily see or understand in the moment. Our lies not only affect us and can have tremendous consequences in our lives, but also shape the reality of others. Lies, no matter how small, shape the reality of all those involved. There's no better way to crush rapport than by telling a lie. As the saying goes, truth hurts, but lies kill. Lies kill friendships, marriages, business deals, relationships, and leadership. In all conversations, trust is key. If you cannot trust completely the words coming out of someone's mouth, or they cannot trust the words that you speak, you are then at a stalemate. There is no longer a need for conversation. Lies of omission, leaving out key parts of a story, or twisting the truth to make yourself look better, are just as vile and corrosive as a blatant lie and must be avoided at all costs. We'll skip the personal story on that one. And get into the end here of this chapter. When you begin to leverage the power of speaking in a positive way, rather than vomiting out the same cliche trash without thought, things begin to change. Those around you will begin to see you differently. The timidity that holds you back can be squashed when you clearly know your intentions. Your meetings will be shorter and your direction will be clearer. How would that affect productivity? Your children will know your expectations and appreciate your encouragement rather than anticipate your disapproval. Your wife will know that you care as you listen to her and ask questions with a desire to understand. You must remember that the battle is with yourself. You must be willing to fight your ego, your anger, your habits, your opinions in favor of what you ultimately want. A better team, a loving relationship with your wife, children that listen, or direction that is easy for others to follow. All these things are achievable, but they will require that you are clear with your intention for speaking, that you are willing to listen and meet others where they are at today, and that you are always honest. These 3 tools will serve you. Keep them sharp and at the ready. And then the 3 action steps for this chapter. Start by listening to yourself, to your tone, and to the words that you use. Next time that you need to speak to others during a meeting or an important phone call or just a conversation, write down your intentions. What is your objective? The next time that you are in a conversation, don't be a topper and tell why what you do or what you did is better. Ask a question and then another and another. Keep your focus on the other person. So that's most of chapter 5 of my new book, Open. Open is available on Kindle and on print on demand on Amazon as well. Or you can get a PDF copy at Prepare.Defend.Lead.com. You can also check out the t-shirts there. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this episode up right here. As always, hold fast, God bless, and follow me on Instagram at Prepare.Defend.Lead. That's the best place to follow what's going on, what kind of shenanigans me and the family are up to, especially with the move. And if you want to get a hold of me, want to contact me, want to ask a question, or have a topic for this podcast, or a guest you'd like to see on this podcast, you can always direct message me on Instagram as well.